Well, hello and welcome to episode 136 of PhotoKitchen. I'm your humble host, MD Welch, and today on the menu, we're doing a little bit of repair. I have my Sony 135mm f 1.8 lens, and it's in need of a little TLC. This ring here broke off. This ring holds the hood and the lens filter. So this is where your lens filter screws in, as you can see here, and also where your lens hood would clip on. Now, I've kind of gone back and forth on whether or not this is a design flaw or a design element that Sony has incorporated. If you've ever worked with any sort of cameras before, you know that, especially like speed lights and stuff like that, they're built to break so you don't damage the overall thing when you attach it to your camera. And honestly, looking at this plastic ring and also the ring on my replacement part here, I'm almost positive now that Sony does this intentionally. So if you drop the lens, that the lens hood will just shear off, or the filter will shear off. And even though that you got to go and install this thing again, you can. Now, the part itself is about $130 some odd. You're going to need some tools here, a little pick to ply things off. I got this from Harbor Freight. I'll share a link in the post. Sometimes you can pick those up for free, by the way, if you're a Harbor Freight person. I also picked up some parts as well. So this is the tape that's going to go on, including the actual replacement part. It's about $400 repair to Sony. You're going to need some Japanese jeweler screwdrivers, JIS screws. These are designed specifically for Japanese, what would be a Phillips head. So you're gonna need to pick those up. I'll include the part and link down in the bottom description below. I also have a little automotive plastic trim tool to get underneath this rubber ring here. That's the yellow thing off to the side. And I'm just gonna start here a little bit off camera, getting this metal pick. This was the most nerve-wracking, or is the most nerve-wracking part of this repair, is getting underneath this rubber ring. Sorry, it's going a little bit off camera here, but getting this rubber ring kind of going. Once you get it going though, it's surprisingly easy. And I will say for anybody who's done a few flat tire repairs on their mountain bike or road bike, this feels very much like just getting a really easy tire off of the rim. Once I got it going, it just slips off. There you go. Now, I couldn't find this rubber ring as a part. I was a little bit worried that this was going to stretch out. I have now since used this lens for many hours and successfully had it done. So the next thing to do is we're going to take off this tape here. This is the tape that weather seals the camera, and that is a replacement part. Again, I will get that in the description below so you know what to order. Get it started with a little metal pick, and then it just peels right off. Now, some people I've read on the internet have reused this tape. I found later on that the sticky or the adhesive just really wasn't there, and I just chose to use the tape that I had already bought. Why not bother with it? Now, as far as getting the screws off, there's a little pilot hole that you're going to rotate around the lens here to find 4 screws that you're going to unscrew on the camera body. There's 3 black screws and 1 silver screw, and it's probably a good time to say the following thing. If you're not comfortable repairing stuff, don't do this. I mean, it's a really expensive repair to Sony, but this is something that you definitely can do on your own. But if you do it on your own and you break something, don't write me and go, oh, I did this wrong, because you can mess things up. There are 4 screws, as I'm pointing out, and you're just going to remove them with the screwdrivers that I mentioned. They are the smallest size, which means that there's not a lot of torque that you could put on them, and they're in there. They're really stuck. So you got to go ahead and remove them. Now, there's 3 black and 1 silver. The 3 black ones were really easy. They came out pretty much flawlessly. But what ends up being a nightmare is this silver screw at the end. It is just an unbelievable pain in the butt. And I'm just going to speed up my frustration here so you can see how long it took me. This repair should take you maybe a half an hour once you get everything laid out. Call it an hour, hour and a half. You know, get tools out, get something laid down that you could put the lens on. But then after that, it's really straightforward. It's an easy repair as far as repairs go. So once I have all the screws removed, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this element out. It was just a little twist, and it just came out really nice and easy. I didn't count on that O-ring, but that makes sense. That's another weather sealing kind of deal there. It doesn't look like it got damaged in the pulling off process whatsoever. You compare the two parts here before you put anything back together. And honestly, by the way, I'm thinking that I'm just going to glue the old ring back in there just to have a backup just in case. But these screws are very tiny. They're very small. That silver one was a real pain to get out. But what it was is it was just in there, and I just needed something to pull it out with. And if I had a magnetic screwdriver, it would have come out just fine. But I had to use this thing from Harbor Freight to get it. That's just a little magnetic probe there. Pop the screw right out. And once that was done, the repair just goes so much smoother. So one thing is putting this O-ring back on. I kind of gone back and forth. Do I put it back in and seat it using my plastic trim tool here, worrying about scratching that unprotected front element? Turned out to be a real just kind of a pain to do. I was really worried about scratching it off, so I just figured let's just drop that O-ring back into the actual piece itself and just get it out really easily. Again, you probably could order this O-ring if you're worried it's going to be cracked or cut up in this repair, but I don't really see how you could do that. But just seat it in there, get it along, try not to twist it up too much, and get everything kind of nice and neat. And then use, some sort of, I would highly recommend a plastic tool. I would not use the metal picks on this. So once I got the whole thing around the prong, sorry, that's off camera a little bit, but there you go. Just go ahead and use a plastic trim tool or something like that to seat it. And again, plastic trim tools are super, super cheap. So just seated it back in there. And once it was seated and kind of at least as twist free as possible, we're good to go and seat it back on. As far as seating it, the only thing that you have to be aware of is that you have to find where the pilot holes are going to be and where the screw holes are going to go using that pilot hole. So what you're going to do is you're going to seat it down and then you're going to kind of rotate things around. And actually, it's probably better to pull that ring out of the lens, rotate the pilot hole around until you find the two screws. I use the two screws where the black and the silver are right next to each other. And I just used that. I guided it around. And once I had that going, it's just putting the screws all back in. So once you get the holes lined up, just seat all four screws back in. Make sure that you don't over torque. Make sure you don't overstrip. I have a feeling I might be doing this again, although I never dropped this lens, so I'm not too sure how this actually got broken. Might have been a transportation issue. With the screws seated, it's time to put the weather sealing tape back on. That old tape is not going to work. Just didn't feel like it had enough adhesive left on it. Probably best not to even count on that. If you're going to order a $130 part, why not order a $20 piece of tape to weather seal everything nice and neat? There's a little bar that separates the start point and the end point. Find that on the lens. Get your tape started, self-adhesive or adhesive backing. Get your tape seated, and then just work your way around slowly. Make sure you don't get anything crooked. And it's a pretty easy process. Again, it's just time and being a little meticulous, and it's a really easy thing to do. Okay, with that sealing tape on, it's time to put the focusing ring on. Focusing ring went on really easy. There's just a little bit of tension there. Just watch out. Make sure you don't flip the lens around and it falls on the floor. I was worried about peeling the tape up. I was careful about getting the ring seated. Again, my old bicycle repair days came in handy here. It was seated really easy. I was also worried about the ring stretched out. It never seemed to be stretched out. Again, I've used this several times since the repair of this video, and it feels stock. There's nothing that feels weird about this lens. Everything works just fine. Let's get the filter on. I've done a video on filters that I think maybe 4 people have watched, but filters are important. I use a UV filter just to protect my lens from all sorts of elements. Also, always have a lens cap on there as well. As far as this, my 135 is now fixed. The tools required, nothing complicated. A set of screwdrivers to make sure that you got everything going. A little plastic trim tool there to lift everything off. Some picks from Harbor Freight. Again, part numbers or links to parts will be in the description, so please check that out. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, though, this is not a video that is kind of condoning that you should try the repair. If you don't feel confident in that, don't ruin a lens. Send it in. I mean, it's a costly repair, but I'd rather see you spend the money than have to buy a whole new lens. So hopefully you've liked this video. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you have, thank you for your support. Share this with anybody who's maybe trying to do a little lens repair themselves and feels confident in using these tools. And I guess until next time, I'm MD Welch wishing you all the best from PhotoKitchen.